Okay, good evening, everyone. Today we will have a lecture on principles of antimicrobial therapy. Yeah, I believe that all of you are familiar already with this during your undergraduate. Yeah, so this will be kind of review for you all. Yeah, before you go to more deeper topic on antibiotic or antimicrobial, yeah, anti-infect topic on infectious diseases, yeah, that I saw in your timetable. Okay, so we have got this introductory case. Yeah, SC is a 76-year-old man who has been in the ICU for 6 days. Yeah, suspected of um, after post myocardial infarction. Okay, he has been unresponsive since his MI and has required mechanical ventilation for 6 days. On day 6, SC becomes hypotensive, tachycardic, tachypneic, and febrile. His oxygen requirements have increased significantly overnight. SC also has increased secretions coming from his endotracheal tube. He is allergic to sulfa drugs. These are his medications. Okay, and then elderly gentleman who is intubated and unable to answer questions. Okay, from this data, this information, what can you gather? What can you gather? Um,
Mm.
About hypotensive and tachycardia, tachypanic,
uh-huh,
maybe because side effect of medication of metoprolol
metoprolol.
because it's a beta blocker,
If beta blocker, it can cause tachycardia or
brady-
bradycardia.
bradycardia and hypertension.
Hypotension. But
Mm.
okay, so you think because of the drug. How about IV? What do you think?
Mm.
So this patient is admitted not because of infection and thing, right? It's because
No.
of myocardial infarction. So how he got infected?
Through the injection?
Through the injection. So do you think this is common scene in ICU? It's a common scenario.
Common.
Yeah. So what do you know about this mechanical ventilation? So patient using mechanical ventilation, are they prone to have infection?
Yeah.
Yeah, because normally what type of infection? Later on we talk about what type of infection later after we have more information. Yeah, so we can suspect infection because he's on mechanical ventilation. Do you know why patient on mechanical ventilation they are prone to have infection?
Because usually they have more like needles
Yeah,
for
they
the
have.
ventilation.
Yeah, they probably will have some injury, right? When you insert intubation, and then they have any protection from cilia, from not normal when we breathe normally? When we breathe, we have filter, isn't it? So our cilia, our cough reflex will filter up all the bacteria, all the foreign objects. But this patient cannot, right? He just receive whatever given to him by ventilation. Yeah, so also ventilation also can the bacteria and fungal and all this can grow into the circulation of this ventilation. And furthermore, what are the signs and symptoms of infection that he has? Hypotension, is it connected to the infection? Hypotension, tachypneic, tachycardia. What do you think?
Mm.
Are they all related?
Tachypanic
No.
related.
Yeah, febrile is very related, right?
Febrile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
febrile, so means he has fever, right? And then because normally patient has fever, also have tachycardia. Yeah, so it goes together. And actually, why this patient have hypotension? Because do you know that the patient have infection? Patient can have sepsis. Yeah, sepsis means the infection goes into the blood. Yeah, so and sepsis has um, inflammatory mediator will produce a lot of histamine and all other things, the inflammatory mediators. Yeah, then it can cause vasodilation, and vasodilation will cause hypotension. Yeah, and then when hypotension is in, then you have tachycardia, right? And then when the patient has difficulty to breathe, then there will be a accumulation of carbon dioxide. Yeah? So carbon dioxide accumulated, then it can cause tachypneic. Yeah. So far, as anybody has taught you about the acid-base balance or not? Like acidosis, this patient has respiratory acidosis. Yeah. So far, anybody has taught you about this respiratory acidosis, alkalosis, and all this?
Not in detail.
Yeah, because actually it's very interesting, yeah, to calculate, and it has to be in the master course, like you to when you have a pH, PCO2, yeah. Maybe I can give you an extra class. Let me see the time, yeah, about this. The AB, what do you call ABG, yeah, acid arterial blood,
Arterial blood gas.
yeah, arterial blood gas. So the recipe, I don't know, recipe should be like last semester or this semester?
The last semester.
Okay, so let us see lah. So what we can do. I can teach you an extra class. No, never mind. No problem. Yeah. All right. So we have got this, and so there will be. Have you heard about septic shock?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this patient falls into septic shock, hypotensive, tachycardia, tachypneic, febrile, yeah, and also she has increased secretions, so coming from the endotracheal tube. This is also one thing, right? If you have a lot of secretion, you tend to have more chance to get infection, yeah. So it means that, yeah, secretion, the bacteria can grow there. Yeah. And among the medicines, is there any medicines that increase the risk for infection? Do you think?
No.
No or yes? Yeah. What do you think this one? Pantoprazole. Why they give pantoprazole for this patient?
Because he's having a lot of medication
A lot of
to prevent stress ulcer.
stress ulcer. Yeah, good that you mentioned stress ulcer. Yeah, so patients in a ICU, yeah, normally has this stress ulcer, yeah, and some more they are not eating well, yeah. This patient is unconscious, so maybe are using the TPN, etc. Yeah, so then give the this one is PPI, right? PPI, yeah. Now, what is the most common side effect when you use PPI, especially injection for long term?
Diarrhea or nausea.
More than that, yeah. So when you suppress the acid, yeah, stomach acid, then because stomach acid has the role as an antibacterial, antimicrobial, yeah. So when you suppress the acid, so there's no more protection, so there is a chance risk to develop infection, yeah, more risk to develop infection. Okay, some more he is elderly also, yeah. So now when continuation you have the BP is in very low, 90, 50, yeah, over 50. So the pulse 120, so it's high, and respiratory rate is high, and also febrile, yeah, and patients are on ventilation, yeah. Rhonchi, so the chest, this one is the auscultation, yeah. Rhonchi with decreased breath sounds, so it's definitely abnormal, and you have tachycardic with regular rate and rhythm. Yeah, still there's no arrhythmia, yeah, luckily, but it's tachycardia. Yeah. So if tachycardia with regular rate and rhythm, what is another term for this? Another clinical term. Yeah, that is sinus tachycardia. Yeah, sinus tachycardia. So you have the white blood cell which is very increased, very high. Yeah, segment and bands. Yeah. So normally bands is only 1%. This one is 17%. Yeah. So actually what is segmented and what is bands? Yeah. So which one is matured, which one is immature?
Uh,
Yeah. So bands are immature. Yeah, bands means that you know that the neutrophil they are polymorphonuclear. Yeah, so the nucleus is like a lot of um, uh, a lot of forms, yeah, and a lot of forms the nucleus. So is the normal one is segmented, yeah. So the matured matured neutrophil they are segmented, yeah. So immature one is bands, okay, and normally bands is only 1 to 3% like that, yeah. So now is 17%, is very high, okay. So and then creatinine, serum creatinine, yeah, 158 159. Do you think high or low? Yeah, actually by right we should calculate the creatinine clearance. Yeah,
yeah.
so we need to calculate creatinine clearance, but serum creatinine is 60 to 120. Yeah, so this one is definitely very high. Yeah, for him. Yeah, for the elderly. Okay, and glucose, yeah, is high, right? More than 11. Yeah, is high. Procalcitonin is high, is also very high. Yeah. Sputum gram stain. So gram stain, there is a more than 25 WBC. Yeah, so it means that if you see a WBC, means the WBC is very high. Yeah, and the sputum stain LPF means low power field. Yeah, low power field. Yeah, so and there's a gram negative bacilli, yeah. So in the gram stain, gram negative bacilli, the sputum still pending, blood spill culture still pending, yeah. How long you think this sputum culture and blood culture can come out? How long normally?
2 to 3 days.
normally, yeah, within 1 to 2 days. Yeah, so if you have in the undergraduate, you have the microbiology practical, right? Yeah, so if you culture bacteria, yeah, aerob bacteria is within 48 hours you should get the result. Yeah, but means that it will grow within 24 hours. Then the microbiologists have to identify. So after the culture it grows, you still have to isolate, and isolate. Then you have to uh, identify the bacteria. Maybe it will take 2 days. Yeah, but if it is anaerobe, probably it will take a bit longer. Yeah, or even if it is fungal, yeah, or acid fast bacteria, probably you have to have a longer period. Yeah, like TB, maybe you need 4 to 6 weeks. And then for similarly for virus, yeah, viruses, and also for fungus, yeah, then you will take a longer time. Okay, but sputum gram stain is fast, yeah, so you can get the result within a few hours. Okay, actually gram stain, if you can do by yourself, it's only like a few minutes if you have the solution. Yeah, so probably 1 hour you can get, right? But if you send to the lab, probably half day lah you can get. Yeah, the most is 1 day. Yeah, because they send the result is like 1 day. But if you are computerized, probably you can check within half day. Yeah, when they already done the analysis. So, but what is the important to get this sputum gram stain or the gram stain? Anything, and it can be sputum, urine, whatever. So what's um, the important to get the gram stain?
to differentiate the gram positive or negative.
Yeah, then from that what you can do?
Resistance.
The sputum gram stain, you cannot do the resistance yet. Yeah, you don't even know the bacteria. You just know whether it is gram negative or gram positive. That's all.
Okay.
So what is the use of that?
For deciding the antibiotic,
Yes, the empirical, yeah. So at least, yeah, you know the gram, positive or negative, yeah. From there you can select a better selection rather than nothing, yeah, rather than blind at all, yeah. So you can sort of select, yeah. Okay, next, so these are the in our uh, normal flora, yeah, what we call microbiome, yeah, normal flora. So in the skin, you already have Staphylococcus aureus, epidermidis, yeah. Lower respiratory tract normally is sterile, and then small intestine, yeah, a lot of bacteria, right, in the intestine, yeah. It is introduced by our food, yeah. So normally these are quite often gram negative, and then also anaerobe, yeah, and then respiratory tract you have more aerobe, yeah. So why do we need to know this? Why do we need to know what are the bacteria normally normal flora? Why?
to make the treatment more selective.
Yes. How it helps us in the treatment? Because
Prevent from resistance.
yeah, because they are normal flora, right? We don't have to destroy them. They are normal flora, right? But why you
Yeah.
want? By what helps us? Because normally this normal flora, yeah, will cause disease when the balance is not correct, right? When the balance is correct, so they don't cause disease. But once our body, for example, immunocompromised, yeah, and maybe we have got some injury, yeah, then this for example, like if you cut the skin, yeah, injury, so probably the Staphylococcus aureus can come in, right, and then cause some carbuncle, yeah, or some skin infection, yeah. What we call this skin infection, cellulitis, yeah. Then you know cellulitis normally caused by either staph epidermidis or staph aureus, yeah, because these are the normal flora there, huh? And then when you have the upper respiratory tract infection, yeah, for example, like sinusitis, yeah, so probably you know, oh, most probably it is Streptococcus or Staphylococcus, yeah, because these are the most common bacteria there, yeah. And even lower respiratory tract normally sterile, but if there is infection, probably these bacteria come from here or from here, from the mouth, right? So what are the bacteria that normally, like what are the pneumonia, yeah, that comes from the bacteria come from our mouth? That is, what do you call this? When you are choking, when, for example, somebody, you know, get choked, like stroke patient, yeah, if you are not careful, you give them drink, yeah, they get choked, then you know that the water or the drink can come into the lung, cause infection, yeah. So this is called aspiration, right? So pneumonia, aspiration, yeah, aspiration. So this, so if this pneumonia, yeah, is caused by aspiration, so you know that most probably they are anaerobes, yeah. So because in the mouth there are a lot of anaerobe, so you have to cover with back, antibiotic that will kill the anaerobe, okay. And then you have stomach. When you have all this, yeah, and large intestine, probably there's a Pseudomonas, Streptococcus, etc., Enterococcus, yeah. All right, and there's here is should have this, yeah. What do you call UTI, yeah, UTI, urinary tract infection. Urinary tract normally is sterile. In the normal, it is sterile, yeah, but it can, the bacteria can come from the anus, yeah, and then from the gastrointestinal tract, yeah. So you have the E. coli. Where is E. coli? E. coli, yeah, Enterobacteriaceae, yeah, Enterobacteriaceae, E. coli, for example, yeah, E. coli, Escherichia coli, yeah. So they are in the large intestine. It can walk, walk, yeah, it can spread to the urinary tract. So the urinary tract infection, most common causative agent is E. coli. Now, so we have seen the clinical presentation, yeah. So review of symptoms consistent with an infectious etiology. So like this patient, we know this patient is unconscious, yeah, using ventilator. So there is a etiology, yeah. Sign and symptoms may be non-specific, like fever, etc. Specific signs and symptoms are beyond the scope of this chapter, because signs and symptoms, like different infection have different signs and symptoms, yeah, like endocarditis, pneumonia, yeah, even the gastrointestinal, yeah, so many different infection, yeah. HIV also infection, isn't it? Yeah, and then you have a history of present illness. You must know comorbidity. So patients with diabetes, for example, have prone to get infection. And current medication, so it's just now I pointed out, PPI, can make the patient prone to get infection. Allergies, and then also if the patients are using the immunosuppressants, previous antibiotic exposure, may provide clue regarding colonization of infection with new specific pathogens, or resistant pathogen. Previous hospitalization and healthcare utilization. So you have this hospital acquired, and community acquired, right? Different, So there will be different bacteria, different set of bacteria causing community acquired or hospital acquired. And then the travel histories, and you have like malaria and all this, now with COVID, and then social history, and maybe pet or animal exposure now getting important as well, occupational exposure, probably with patients, for example, like TB, among the migrant workers, there are a lot of TB, maybe the patients, sorry to say, maybe sex workers, then you have the venereal disease, and then environmental exposure, okay, probably, you have got outbreak epidemic, or something, okay, and then maybe water, water, what do you call this, contamination, food contamination, and physical finding consistent with infectious etiology, vital signs, body system abnormalities, okay, like all this inflammation, so in the signs of infection and inflammation, they are overlapping, okay, because when you have infection, then you will attract the inflammatory mediators and cause inflammation. So they are like hand to hands, and then you have the diagnostic imaging, depending on the type of infection, like for, let's say, lung infection, of course you need radiograph, chest x-ray, CT scan, MRI, and label leukocyte scan, for example. And non-microbiology laboratory studies like white blood cells, with differential. What is the meaning of white blood cell with differential?
with neutrophil, basophil.
Yes, Why we need that differential? Why do we need the differential? Because if you have bacterial infection, normally which
Infection.
which which one will increase if bacterial infection?
Is it neutrophil?
Yes, neutrophil. And if it is viral, probably, lymphocyte, right? Lymphocytes will increase. So, and then if you have monocytes also for the viral, and if you have what do you call this, allergic, probably different thing. Allergic is normally what do you call this, ayo, that one, what do you call, not basophil, but another one,
Eosinophil.
eosinophil, eosinophil for allergic, okay. And so, and then the ESR, C-reactive protein, and procalcitonin, what is that? What are they? So they help in diagnosis, So because they are actually inflammatory markers, especially the ESR and CRP, And as I said that normally when you have infection, you have also inflammation, okay? And then you have gram stain and culture and such. So normally when you do culture, they also do the susceptibility testing, So it means that what do you call it, sensitivity. Yeah, normally we said sensitivity, okay, but here it's susceptibility. Yeah, almost the same. Okay, so WBC and differential count. Yeah, so we have got neutrophil. Yeah, as I said, that segment and bands. Yeah, bands are the immature one. Yeah, so the language that we use, the term shift to the left. Shift to the left means there are a lot of immature neutrophils. Okay, so it means that there's a lot of production of white blood cells. Yeah, there is, because it's needed, so they will produce more. Okay, so there's agranulocytosis, leukopenia, and neutropenia. Yeah, and these are the terms used when you have very low white blood cells. Okay, so the leukocytosis can be caused by bacterial infection, fungal infection, physiologic stress, tissue injury, yeah, medication. So now we have to um, um, pay attention that the medication like corticosteroid, yeah, can also increase the white blood cells. Okay, and leukopenia, okay, long-standing infection, cancer, and medication. For example, chemotherapy. Yeah, so leukocytosis is when the leukocyte is high. Leukopenia when the leukocyte is low. Yeah, and beware that in low leukocyte people have risk of infection. So at that time when neutropenic infection, yeah, so the white blood cells does not really, it's not really high, yeah, so it is low. Okay, so you have to see the it's not high but low, so it means that this is a neutropenic type. Yeah, okay, so you have the lymphocyte which is 20 to 40, monocyte 2 to 8. Yeah, so I said monocyte can be because of the tuberculosis, yeah, protozoal, so sorry, not viral, yeah, more of the protozoal, and also leukemia. Yeah, eosinophil, as I mentioned, hypersensitivity reaction. Okay, and also parasitic infections. Yeah, infestation, actually, parasitic infestation. Yeah, basophil is also hyper reaction, sensitivity. Yeah, and lymphocyte, we have T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte, and viral infection, as I mentioned, in lymphocyte will be high. Yeah, and also the tuberculosis, fungal infection as well. Yeah, and lymphopenia, when you have lymphopenia means the lymphocyte is low, for example in HIV. Now, ESR and CRP, they are non-specific markers of inflammation. Yeah, as a result of acute phase reactant response. Yeah, so which is the response to inflammatory stimuli such as infection and tissue injury. These tests may be used as markers for infectious disease. Yeah, because they are elevated when the disease is acutely active. So it is only for acute active, yeah, and usually fall in response to successful treatment. So it is also useful when you have a good antibiotic, suitable antibiotic. So these two should fall, yeah. And clinicians may use these tests to monitor a patient's response to therapy in osteomyelitis, yeah, because it's hard to get, yeah, the sample of osteomyelitis and infective endocarditis. Yeah, infective endocarditis is hard to get because it is inside your heart valve. Yeah, so you can't get the bacteria from there. Yeah, so if you get from the blood, probably it won't have in the blood as well. Yeah, and this test should not be used to diagnose infection because they are maybe elevated in non-infection. So they are not specific. Yeah, probably you have got inflammation like rheumatoid arthritis. Also, the ESR and CRP will increase. Now, another now newly being used is procalcitonin. Yeah, a hormone of calcitonin, prohormone. Yeah, is rapidly produced in response to bacterial infection. So it is more specific for bacterial infection. Procalcitonin serum levels in conjunction with clinical findings are increasingly being utilized to assess both the need to initiate antibiotic therapy as well as determine when antibiotic therapy may be safely discontinued. So because this procrastinating will increase when you have infection, so you need to, whether you need to initiate therapy or not, yeah, and also whether you need to stop the antibiotic or not. All right. So now this one is when you do gram stain, yeah, so we can differentiate between positive and negative. Okay. Now positive one, yeah, actually gram stain you can look at the microscope, yeah, to whether it is cocci or bacilli, yeah. So if cocci we know already, yeah, so it's more of the staphylococcus, streptococcus, yeah. And if bacilli, then we know there is a listeria, gardenia, no, not gardenia, Gardnerella. Gardenia is a bread, right? Gardenia. Clostridium, Bacillus, yeah, Lactobacillus, etc. Okay, and then you have got bacilli, yeah, E. coli, yeah, is more of bacilli type. Klebsiella. So these are more familiar to our ears, yeah, Klebsiella and E. coli. And we have Pseudomonas, also very virulent, yeah. So you have oxidase positive, okay, and Proteus, etc. is oxidase negative, Shigella, yeah. And gram negative Coccobacilli like Haemophilus influenza. Coccobacilli, well, it's not chocolate, yeah, cocoa, yeah. Coccobacilli, so it's bacilli, but in the cup, they are 2 by 2. So like Haemophilus influenza, yeah. And Moraxella cataralis, and then yeah, cocci. So Coccobacilli means what? Coccus is like round, yeah. Coccus is round. So Coccobacilli means they are round, but they also like a rod. Bacilli is like a rod, yeah. So they are mixed between the round and the one that like a rod, yeah. All right. So Neisseria gonorrhea is cocci. Diplococci, we call it diplococci because it is in pairs, yeah, in pairs. Okay. Now, when we know all this, then we have the microbial culture and sensitivity. So in general, bacterial culture should be obtained prior to initiating antibiotic therapy. Yeah. Ideally lah, yeah, before we start antibiotic therapy, because if you already have the antimicrobial, yeah, and then when you get the blood, yeah, then the blood or any fluid, bodily fluid also contain antimicrobial inside. So the bacteria may or may not grow when you culture it. Yeah, they may have difficulty to grow because there's already got antimicrobial there. Yeah, but nowadays this is not so much a problem because in the kit, yeah, when you put into the kit, when for example, like if you take blood and then you want to culture it, you put into the uh, a broth, yeah. In that broth, yeah, there is chemical that can absorb the antibiotic, yeah. So like an absorbent to absorb the antibiotic. Of course, not all antibiotic will be absorbed there, yeah. All right. So culture and susceptibility testing provides additional information to the clinician to select appropriate therapy. Nah, what are the considerations for selecting antimicrobial regimen? Yeah. So first, I like the patient specific first rather than drug specific. Yeah. Patient specific first, anatomic location of infection. Yeah. Why do you think it is important to know the anatomic location of infection? Like for example, you say that this is UTI, so you know UTI is where, right? Why do we need to know the location?
For the to see the normal flora.
Mm-hmm. So you can guess the normal flora. This one thing. Another thing is that whether it can be it can be achieved, yeah, with certain dosage form, right? For example, if it is in the brain, yeah, like meningitis is inside the brain, right? So you know there's a blood brain barrier, yeah. Whether this drug can go across, yeah, the blood brain barrier or not, we don't know, right? So you have to select those drug that can across, yeah, the um, blood brain barrier, yeah. And also, for example, if it is in the skin, then you probably just give topical antibiotic, yeah. Eye, then you just give eye drop, yeah. So your choice of drug also will be different. And then the antimicrobial history, of course, yeah. Drug allergy history, renal and hepatic function, yeah. So for example, you have got for example, endocarditis, yeah. The first choice will be penicillin for 6 weeks, right? Plus penicillin for 6 weeks plus gentamicin for 2 weeks, yeah. But alas, if you have the penicillin allergy, you cannot use, yeah. Then that time you have to use vancomycin, okay. And then you have renal and hepatic function because you need to adjust the dose, etc., yeah. And concomitant medications, okay, pregnancy and lactation. And then compliance potential, yeah, because you need to finish the antibiotic, right? So if the patient cannot comply, yeah, so there is a risk to develop resistance, yeah, especially for the HIV treatment. Now, for the drug specific, is the spectrum of activity. So whether it is like gram positive, gram negative, narrow spectrum, broad spectrum, yeah. Which one is better, narrow spectrum or broad spectrum?
It depends.
Yeah. Can you elaborate?
Uh, if let's say the organism is not detected,
Mm-hmm. Organism
and
cannot be identified, then you use
the broad one.
broad one. Okay. But actually, you can guess, right? You can best guess, yeah, best guess the causative, yeah. I don't put it in my slide, but actually there is that, yeah. For example, if you have got a UTI, what will be the most common microorganism, and thus what antibiotic you use. So there is something like that, yeah. So theoretically, of course, you need to have the culture first, etc., to initiate the antibiotic. Yeah, but in the case you don't know the bacteria, but you can best guess. Yeah, so that is by guessing. Yeah, but the academic guessing is not just, yeah, guess by your own preference, but it is by the science, yeah, by best guess, okay. And then you have got concomitant medication, pregnancy, lactation, because some drug may not be suitable, yeah. And compliance potential. No, we're talking about this, right? No, spectrum of
The
activity.
spectrum.
So uh yeah, the spectrum, for example, for anaerobe, aerobe, we have got special set of antibiotic, yeah. And dosing, of course, you need, which one is better for antibiotic? A bit higher or a bit lower the dose? Which one is better?
From the previous attachment, right, they usually use the higher dose
Yeah, why do you think?
because they want to boost up the
Mhm.
uh boost up the effect.
Mhm. Yeah. So in principle, we need to achieve yeah, adequate dose to kill the bacteria. Yeah, it may be a few times higher than the MIC, right? So it is better to use a higher dose rather than a lower dose, because if you use the lower dose, the bacteria don't die and then they develop the resistance. Yeah, so if you use higher dose, but of course not too high, always too high, that is also not good. Yeah, but I mean that a bit higher, yeah, is still acceptable and even can be better. Yeah, and then pharmacokinetic properties. What is this pharmacokinetic property? So what are the pharmacokinetic property? It's like what? Clearance? Is it a property? Whether this drug is cleared in kidney, liver, yeah, and what else?
Clearance,
Yeah,
half-life.
half-life, yeah. So you know the accumulation, yeah, and the drug interaction, yeah, protein binding. So all these are pharmacokinetic, right? And then pharmacodynamic properties. What are in the
Absorption.
absorption is kinetic or dynamic?
Yeah.
Kinetic or dynamic? Is kinetic, right?
Kinetic.
Dynamic is like the interaction, probably dynamic. Yeah, and then whether it is do you know this bactericida and bacteriostatic? So that
Yeah, yeah.
is pharmacodynamic, yeah. And then adverse effect potential. So of course you have to bear into the mind adverse effect, yeah. And then drug interaction, yeah. So for example, erythromycin, you have got a lot of drug interaction, clarithromycin as well, yeah. And the last thing we have to consider the cost, yeah. We cannot use antibiotic, yeah, and always use the higher end, most expensive, yeah. And then later on the patient cannot pay, or yeah, or the government become bankrupt. Yeah. Okay, so these are the modes of action. Yeah, so you have different antibiotic with different mode of action, and normally when we combine antibiotic, yeah, theoretically we should combine antibiotic with different mode, yeah, so that there will be synergistic. So not like, for example, you combine microlide with aminoglycoside, yeah, there's no use because it's the same. Yeah, but this is very theoretical. Sometimes in practice it is not like that. Yeah. For example, quinolone is inhibiting DNA, yeah, cell membrane disruption like daptomycin and colistin, yeah. So if you like to read again about mode of action, you can do this, but this is just for us. I just see this one is good for us just to have a summary, yeah. So I won't be reading one by one lah, yeah. But it is good for us to know which antibiotic belong to which class, at least lah, yeah. Beta-lactam class, what is this class, yeah. All right. Now, okay. Combination just now we said that. So we combine when there is synergistic activity, yeah, such as use of gentamicin with beta-lactams in streptococcal endocarditis. Yeah, the beta-lactam normally, for example, like penicillin. Yeah, so we plus gentamicin, so they have the synergistic, and beta-lactam and beta-lactamase inhibitor. Okay, combinations. So this is like coamoxiclav. There are actually many. Yeah, Unacin is ampicillin plus sulbactam. So the sulbactam is the beta-lactamase inhibitor. Okay, there are so many other yeah, that you have piperazillin tazobactam. Okay, so the same, yeah. And then to avoid resistance emerging during treatment, yeah, such as the multi-drug regimen used for tuberculosis and the combined use of triaxone and azithromycin to treat gonorrhea, polymicrobial infection, yeah, etc., etc. Okay, so basically we want to avoid resistance, yeah, and then to expand the empirical antimicrobial spectrum. Okay, so let's say you have one antibiotic only for gram negative, yeah, then you want to target also gram positive, then you use another, you combine another antibacterial, yeah, that is targeting to gram positive, yeah. In that case you can get more results. Okay, what is super infection? Super infection is infection of other microorganism, yeah, because of the use of antibiotic, yeah, such as Clostridium difficile. So these are bacteria, anaerobic, okay, and if we use antibiotic, for example, especially the broad spectrum one, yeah. So like fluoroquinolone, for example, yeah, it can cause, it can disturb the normal flora, yeah, and then it causes the overgrowth of Clostridium difficile, and it causes pseudomembranous colitis, yeah. So it is like diarrhea, yeah, excessive diarrhea, etc. Yeah, so we call it pseudomembranous colitic. Okay, if several different antimicrobials possess activity against a targeted pathogen, the antimicrobial that is least likely to be associated with collateral damage may be preferred. Yeah, so meaning that we should pay attention to this Clostridium difficile, and there are only 2 antibiotics that are currently used for Clostridium difficile. Yeah, there is the vancomycin, and another one is what do you call this? Coamoxiclav. Yeah, no, wait. So I mentioned what? I mentioned vancomycin, right? Another one is, oh, sorry, not coamoxiclav, but metronidazole. Yeah, so either one. Yeah, either vancomycin or metronidazole. All right. So we're talking about adverse effects. Yeah, there is also direct effects. Yeah, like hypersensitivity, toxicity, including in pregnancy and breastfeeding, and drug interactions. Okay, and indirect adverse effects, effects on commensal flora. But yeah, effect on commensal, like, you know, Clostridium difficile. Yeah. Now another one is candidiasis, because when we disturb our normal flora, yeah, so not only other bacteria can grow, but fungus can grow as well. Yeah. One of the example is candida, because in female there are a lot of candida. Yeah. It can cause candidiasis, and candidiasis can be in the mouth area, oropharyngeal or valvovaginal. Yeah, valvovaginal. Yeah, so it's candidiasis. Increased risk of colonization and infection with drug-resistant pathogen. Yeah, important. And also effects on environmental flora. Okay, and then now you have that important adverse events. I won't be reading all, yeah, but most important, we have to pay attention, yeah. That is the like ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and nephrotoxicity, there are a lot, yeah. Like aminoglycoside is one. Okay, and then yeah, so if you see this clindamycin can cause diarrhea, pseudomembranous colitis. Yeah, you know this uh, term already. Yeah, and then you have nephro and neurotoxicity, blood dyscrasia, Steven Johnson, yeah, myositis, etc., etc. Okay, even this one also still got. Yeah, the good thing is that you have the suggestion what to monitor. Okay. Now, when talk about resistance, yeah, the development and spread of resistance to antimicrobial is a major problem. Of course, we know everyone knows, yeah. Organism has either natural resistance, intrinsic resistance, or has acquired a resistance mechanism. Yeah, acquired resistance. Although the mechanism are complex, yeah, so it involve all the transfer of the DNA lah, plasmid lah, yeah. Resistance is usually due to selective pressure exerted by the widespread presence of antimicrobial drugs. Yeah. And then antimicrobial resistance is increasing. Yeah, so we know this MRSA, of course, in the hospital MRSA. Yeah, and they also have VRSA, vancomycin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, and in overseas you have vancomycin resistant Enterococci, VRE. Yeah, and strains of Klebsiella, Klebsiella aerificia. Okay, so you have also E. coli and Klebsiella, yeah, that produce extended spectrum beta lactamase, yeah, so enzymes. So this bacteria, this organism are called ESBL. Yeah, so you have MRSA, VRE, yeah, and ESBL. And you have multi-resistant Acinetobacter and Pseudomonas aeruginosa as well. Now, our guideline, yeah, say we have to start smart, then focus. Yeah, what is start smart? Do not start antibiotics without clinical evidence of bacterial infection. So we have to have evidence first of infection. So if so the best is to have either gram stand, yeah, first, or culture, but gram stand is, I think, a must. Yeah, and where is evidence of bacterial infection? Avoid inappropriate use of broad spectrum agents. Initiate prompt effective antibiotic treatment within 1 hour of diagnosis and suspected sepsis. Yeah, so it is because the time that this patient use antibiotic is very important. Okay, and then we have to take history, document the indication, etc., etc., obtain culture, yeah, prescribe single dose. So for surgical prophylaxis, yeah, better depends on surgery. So some surgery you have got more urgent to have antibiotic, yeah, but some surgery, other surgery, yeah, then you don't need. For example, it's because surgery has criteria, yeah. So there is some will be classified as what? Surgery prophylaxis, yeah, high risk, low risk, yeah, to develop the what I'm talking about, prescribed single dose antibiotic for. So depends on surgery. So some surgery you need antibiotic, but if you need antibiotic, don't prescribe combination, prescribe single dose. Okay. Now then after we already determined the antibiotic, we already started. So now we focus, yeah, review the diagnosis and antibiotic use by 48 hours. Not too fast, but also not too long, because within 48 hours, we should know, right, whether the ESR decrease or not, WBC decrease or not. Otherwise, we have to change the antibiotic, yeah, and make and clearly document an antimicrobial prescribing decision. Okay, one of the 5 options: stop antibiotics if no evidence of infection. Yeah, switch intravenous to. Oh, I have not. Wait. I need to charge my laptop. Okay, so switch intravenous to oral antibiotics when patient can take orally already. Yeah, and change the antibiotic narrower spectrum where possible. So narrow, the more narrow the better actually. Yeah, continue with documented review or stop date. Outpatient parenteral. So there's something called outpatient parenteral, means that the patients is at home and they are being given injection antimicrobial. Okay, so these two are summary. Yeah, obtain patient history including clinical presentation. Just now we read already. Obtain appropriate diagnostic imaging. So we have mentioned this. Pathogen known before starting antimicrobial is yes considerable for selecting antimicrobial regimen. Yeah, these are the thing that we have already discussed. Yeah, and if the patient is severely ill, okay, if the patient is seriously ill, yeah, so we consider broad spectrum. So just now Ivy said depends on what? Ivy said depends. Why? Depends
It
on
depends
the.
on the whether the organism detected.
Yeah, yeah. Beside that, also depends on the patients. Yeah, if the patient is severely ill, okay, so we don't want to guess so much. Yeah, so we just give broad spectrum, because the broad spectrum can also kill this, right? It is not a very good one, meaning that we better, because we want, if every time you use the broad spectrum, yeah, you make chances of resistance. Yeah, so we must keep in mind to use narrow. But if the patient is severely ill, probably it is this we need to prioritize them to use the um, uh, broad spectrum. Yeah, okay. So start empirical antimicrobial therapy and then provide patient education as needed. Okay, consider adjunctive therapy. Adjunctive therapy may be those therapy, yeah, that will improve the condition. Yeah, and then start definitive therapy. Provide patient education as needed. Consider adjunctive therapy. Okay, so this we have done already. And then monitoring, yeah, so monitoring, we monitor of course the vital sign, toxicity, adverse drug reaction, yeah, and the laboratory data. Okay, is patient improving? Yes. Yeah, if yes, then de-escalate. You know what is the de-escalate? Can you explain what is de-escalate therapy?
Like from IV to oral.
Yeah, it can be from IV to oral, but also it can be from a broad spectrum to the narrow spectrum. Yeah, or from a newer generation to the older generation. So meaning that you bring it back, yeah, to a more, because if we keep doing using the new antibacterial, so the old one and the new one also will get resistant. Yeah, and whereas we don't have anything new anymore. Yeah, so if it is common and patients are not so confused, yeah, better, yeah, if the patient is not very acute lah, so you have to de-escalate. Yeah, de-escalate, so use more narrow one. Yeah, don't use the nuclear bomb. yeah, to kill only one bacteria, for example. Yeah, yeah. So that's the illustration. Okay, if the patient cured, then we stop the antimicrobial drugs. Change the antimicrobial based on the finding of the, because now you are based on the gram stain, then you choose the antibacteria. So then meanwhile you wait for a definitive microbial culture come back. Yeah, if the culture come back, then you can choose, yeah, wholeheartedly, okay, with confidence, an antibiotic. Yeah, but we have to bear in mind that in the microbial test, yeah, so the antibiotic is given as in vitro, not in vivo, because they are in the petri dish, yeah, in vitro, yeah. So whatever is good in vitro may not translate to in vivo. Do you understand? Yeah, because when we give the drug is in the petri dish, yeah, they don't, the drug doesn't need to have the absorption lah, drug interaction lah, yeah, the binding to protein lah, no need, right? Straight away with the bacteria there and then, yeah. So it may not reflect the situation of in vivo in our body. Understand? Yeah, so we have to be very careful on that as well. Yeah, so then we need TDM. Yeah, some drug need TDM, for example like gentamicin, vancomycin, we know already. Okay, but TDM is not only to because there are some more drugs that actually need TDM, but we can't do. Yeah, we don't have the the reagent, for example, to do it. Yeah. So, and this is just a guideline. For example, for this, if you want to do, you do the pre and you do the pause, yeah, or pre-pause together. Yeah. All right. So this one you don't need to memorize. Yeah. This is, I think, a good summary. That's why I'm just copy and paste for you. Yeah. Now the last thing we want to talk about is antimicrobial stewardship. Yeah, so it is a systematic approach, yeah, to optimize the use of antimicrobials. The aim of antimicrobial stewardship is to improve patient outcomes and reduce adverse consequences. Yeah, so especially resistance, yeah, toxicity, and unnecessary cost. Evidence show that effective hospital antimicrobial stewardship programs decrease inappropriate inflammation. Yeah. Um, in hospital, antimicrobial stewardship, multidisciplinary care team. Yeah. So you have a lead doctor, infectious disease physician, clinical microbiologist, or other clinician, and a clinical pharmacist must be there. Yeah. In the community, now the most hospitals normally they have no problem to have this, and they are encouraged to have the team. But in the community, yeah, how? Okay, it's more difficult. Now, antimicrobial stewardship should involve the development of antimicrobial policies, yeah, appropriate to prescribers' practices and facilitation of these policies by the law enforcement. All right, and now the activities of AMS, yeah, can be implementing local clinical guidelines that are consistent with the latest version of national guideline, yeah, and incorporate also local microbial and antimicrobial susceptibility patterns. Establishing formulary, that was it. Yeah, so your hospital can have formulary to restrict. Okay, for example, like vancomycin. Yeah, you can't prescribe vancomycin unless you are, for example, you need a permission from the specialist or from the yeah, specialist or consultant, for example, yeah. Or you can only use certain medicine, for example, linezolid, yeah, for MRSA only, yeah. Then you have to have, for example, the signature of microbiologist, let's say, yeah. And then ensuring laboratories use selective reporting of the, because the lab will come out with the result of certain drug sensitivity, yeah. And normally doctor, based on those recommendation, will choose one drug. Okay, so we need to also ensure that the laboratory will not just use simply use any drug, yeah. Must be the drug that have the are what do you call available in the hospital, yeah. And reviewing antimicrobial prescribing with intervention. So there's a review, yeah, doing the drug utilization review, and education, educating prescribers, pharmacists, nurses, etc., and the patient as well, yeah. Including sorry, I think it's streamlining, yeah, and de-escalation of therapy, and then dose optimization, parenteral or to oral conversion, yeah, and then publishing hospital and health service specific antimicrobial susceptible data annually. Yeah, so we need to publish and give to all the doctors, the nurses, yeah, so that they know, and the pharmacists as well, yeah, those people involved in the care, so they know, oh, why not use this, because it's already, for example, resistant, yeah. Okay, next, I think finish. Do you have any question?
So far, no.
No, yeah. So let me complete. I mean, I will I'll try to correct if there's a mistake in these slides. Then I
Yeah.
will send it to the. I will upload it to the Google. Yeah. Google
Okay.
Classroom.
Okay.
All right. So Dia is not here, and I think she can simply read the lecture.